All right. Well, I have a list here that I wanted to go over of just some fun trivia about the movie. And I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it because some of these are fun. You might have heard some of these. Maybe
Okay.
you haven't heard some of them, but just let me know what you think about these. This was fun. I think that Ian McDiarmid might have spoken about this at Celebration, but the Emperor's chair was mechanized so that it could rotate when the scene called for it, right? Like someone off camera was going to press
Push
the
a
button
button.
and hit their marks. However, the mechanism never worked, so Ian McDiarmid had to make it move by shuffling his feet under his robe, and he had to hit like certain spots. It's just funny to think about like how important that scene is and how powerful that character comes across. But
To picture his feet like underneath.
I like to think that when Luke shows up and Vader shows up and the Emperor's like, he's like, all right, and he's like, oh fuck, my chair's not working. He's like trying to subtly do it so he doesn't like look dumb in front of Luke,
Yeah.
So-
It's a funny idea because like this big villain, crazy bad guy, and he's like,
Here's another one about Ian McDiarmid. According to Ian McDiarmid, George Lucas originally cast him simply as the physical performance of the Emperor, and we've seen Lucas do this over and over again with Darth Vader, Darth Maul. He would, he has what the look is, and then he has what the sound is. And Empire Strikes Back had already established what the Emperor sounded like. Cannot be done. He would be a powerful ally. Clav Ravel was originally that voice, and it says here, this became evident to him when the producer told him that if he was able to get his voice close enough to Clive Ravel, who betrayed him in Empire Strikes Back, Lucas would let him use the on-camera vocals in the final movie. However, McDiarmid felt that he could conduct a stronger, more wicked and
better
demonic
one.
voice for the Emperor as opposed to Ravel's more aristocratic Emperor. Lucas and even Steven Spielberg were so impressed that it ended up becoming the signature trait of the character. Yeah.
Your faith in your friends is yours.
I know.
Like
Imagine that happening today. Like you put out a new TV show and you take a character that appeared in a movie and you just have them sound completely different. Like people will be like, "What's happening?" But then you don't get like that iconic voice.
Sure.
Ian McDiarmid has talked about before how like trying to find that voice. He is a big fan of like Japanese cinema and Japanese voices, especially male voices. They really like they start in your gut. Like they get down here. So then he would, he naturally his speaking voice is quite up here and aristocratic, and that's where his Palpatine voice. But then the Emperor descends down to your stomach. It's down here and it comes out. It's very, very cool. But I like that Japanese mannerisms and culture. It's like they're so steeped in Star Wars, even subtly like that. It's really cool.
Yeah. Thanks from Samurai to just talking and stuff too. No, that's great.
During the shot in which Salacious Crumb is chewing on 3PO's eye, Anthony Daniels had a panic attack while in this 3PO suit. While filming, he didn't actually say his lines. All of his lines were dubbed.
Okay. I mean, it's easy enough for him.
He kept repeating, "Get me up, get me up, get me up," over and over. This is the take that's used in the final cut. So
he's having a panic
we
attack.
We don't get to hear it, but we see that. I guess Lucas is just kind of like, yeah, well, don't waste it. Film is forever. Fate is temporary. I'm going to use that one.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know he had a panic attack. That's
he had a
interesting.
panic attack, and I can easily see that. Just being so claustrophobic, and then this thing's like attacking you and stuff.
Well, yeah, he's already been trapped in this suit.
Exactly.
Like he's just stuck in there.
Yeah. And he's such a skinny guy. Like, I can't imagine a protocol suit for me,
Yeah,
like,
right.
But even him, like, it's even smaller on him. Ugh, I can't imagine it.
Yeah. And you're laying down. I don't know how hard it is to stand up, right? Like, he can't just get up. Like, it would be so hard to stand up in that.
It would, yeah.
His legs don't really bend that well.
No. No, there's so many shots of him just kind of, like, crumpling to his knees and falling.
Yeah.
Poor guy. Okay, this is a fun one. Originally, Yoda was not in the script. Yoda was added when George Lucas determined him best to confirm to Luke as to whether Darth Vader was his father or not. This also kind of goes in with the idea that when Empire Strikes came out and that revelation was made, there was a vast majority of people that did not believe
He's lying,
Vader.
Right?
James Earl Jones did not believe that Vader was his father. No, he's lying. He's lying. So I think it's important that Lucas, who I know that he like consulted like a child psychologist about like, no, people, they will not believe it. You have to tell them. So, all right, well, who do I get to say it where people will believe it? Yoda. Yoda doesn't lie.
Yeah.
I mean, at least right now.
I mean,
he can be a little ornery sometimes.
You go into that whole point of view thing.
Yeah, sure, right?
that was another one of the quotes I thought about. I'm like, I don't know. Obi-Wan's just screwing with people.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what I told you was true.
From a certain point of view. Yeah.
Damn it.
But yeah, I like that Yoda was selected, and he wasn't even going to appear in the movie at all.
I'm glad that they put him in there, because him having his death scene and stuff, too, is like a sad moment,
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess another, in Empire Strikes Back, when Luke takes off for Bespin and they're looking up and he's like, no, there is another. Originally, that was a completely new character that Lucas was thinking of, but he wanted to end Star Wars with 3. It was going to be a little longer, but he wanted to end with 3, so he kind of just wrapped that up. It's like, all right, tell him there is another Skywalker. And then the audience is like, oh, yeah, there was a line like that. Who's that going to be? Leia.
Leia, is it?
Yeah.
Sister.
I have a
Didn't
trivia about that later, too. Ian McDiarmid. No, I already just had this one. How about this? So we got 2 Death Stars in the original trilogy.
Yes.
What's the difference between those 2?
One's bigger.
How much bigger?
8 times.
Nope.
I forget.
I don't know the math, but the second Death Star is 460% larger than the first one.
460% larger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could fit the first one in there then.
You could.
And
I think
more.
that's a big Death Star. A lot of these...
Is that why the exhaust port you can fly into this time?
Probably, yeah. Right? 2 meters versus... Well, it just wasn't finished, but I get you. Thank God there was enough room to get in there. So yeah, a lot of
satellite.
A decent amount of these, I had that number memorized for Schmodown. I forgot all about it, but I was going through some of my stuff, being like, oh, that's an interesting one.
Wonder why you said 406%?
Yeah.
Wonder why 6? Why not just stop at 4?
Oh, 460. Did I say 406?
Oh, 60?
460%.
Why go to 60? I wonder. Why not 450? I wonder why they went to 460.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Why not 420?
I don't know. I don't know, Eric.
So you fall on the side of you like Ewoks.
Yeah, I like Ewoks.
When did you learn the name Ewok?
Did
you just always know it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know when I would have known it. I just feel like I've always known it.
Yeah. You know how many times it's said in the movie?
None.
Not once.
They never call them Ewoks.
Not once, but everybody knows
they
it.
were Ewoks.
Everyone does. Wicket, when's his name said?
I don't know if any of their names are said.
None of them are said.
I don't think there's one name.
Nope.
I think the only times you give names is... I don't even know if credits have names for them.
Yeah.
Did the credits have names for them?
Maybe. Certainly the special edition does.
Well, yeah, special edition.
I'm not really sure about originally. But yeah, the word Ewok, never used. Everybody knows it. It's one of the things that I always pull out when people are like, well, what? I have to go to a source book to find something? That's dumb. It's like, oh, yeah, you know about Ewoks? Like, yeah, I know Ewoks. Like, how you know that?
Action figures. That's what it is.
Yeah.
How many action figures named characters that weren't named?
Sure, right? I mean, hell, Crix Medine in Return of the Jedi, his action figure was made while they were still casting, and the guy showed up, and they had the action figure, and they're like, oh, man, the action figure has a beard. Let's go get a fake beard, put it on you, So that's an action figure.
We got to match him to the action figure.
Let's see here. Okay, this is an interesting one. When preparing to work on the special edition, one of the Industrial Light and Magic employees was talking to a friend and mentioned in passing that they were extending the musical number in Jabba's palace.
Yes!
Da, 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 da. Yeah. The friend happened to be the brother of Femi Taylor, the dancer that played Ula.
Oh.
Okay? So Ula being the green Twi'lek that we see
Dropped
in the
into the
original
ring
movie.
for.
And then in 1997, much later, they're going to extend that sequence. This friend of Femi Taylor suggested that get in contact with her, as she was in even better shape than she was when they originally shot the scene. They ended up using her, and the scene is a combination of footage they already had and the new footage recorded 15 years later. Femi Taylor also has the distinction of being the only cast member from the original movies to reprise her role in the special edition.
So they used more footage of her for the music scene.
Yeah.
From her 15 years
but
later.
They intercut it with stuff from 15 years ago. And were you there? Because I was at the autograph hall during Celebration, and I saw Femi Taylor. The woman doesn't age. She looks exactly the same.
Really?
And it's 40 years later. I don't know what that magic is, but I want some.
Want some magic?
Yeah, right?
That's cool. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. This is an interesting one. Another reason for filming under the guise of the nondescript horror movie title. Do you know what the fake title was for Return of the Jedi? I'm sure you've heard it before. Family Guy.
Was it Blue Harvest?
Blue Harvest. It was partially to put off snoopers, and also because the production found out that if they mentioned they were working on the next Star Wars movie, suppliers would automatically ramp up their prices, assuming that the money was no object for Lucasfilm. And it was. Empire Strikes Back went so over budget that Lucas fired its producer for the next movie and became executive producer, to be able to fill in a lot of that stuff to try to keep it under budget. One of the reasons that Richard Marquand was hired, one, he's non-union, so Lucas could stay independent. But
it helped with the credit thing, right? Because they wanted to do the credits in the beginning. He said, no, I don't want that.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, if you say that you're working on the next Star Wars movie, like a location, if we were to go get a location scout for a place down the street, they might be like, oh, okay, yeah, give us $100 and you can use the location.
Sure.
But if Lucasfilm came in, they'll be like, oh, yeah, $10,000, please,
Sure, yeah.
Or way more.
If George Lucas walked into a place being like, I'm looking for a place for this.
Yeah, so I've always liked the Blue Harvest horror beyond imagination story, but I never really knew it was also about just trying to
help the
budget out, like you still have to come under budget with these movies. I know that we like to think that, Lucasfilm and Disney and all that stuff, like they still have to do it, and good producers get really interesting ideas like Blue Harvest.
It's like when you see a hotel area, like prices jump up because there's like an event happening.
Yeah.
But if you go there when there's not an event, they're like half as much.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of locations, the forest that they, I think it's near Crescent City in California, the forest that they filmed Endor on.
Yeah.
Generally, especially redwoods, you cannot alter anything. You come in, you leave it exactly as you came out, right? Like in Lord of the Rings, whenever they were creating Edoras, which was the Rohirrim capital, like on top of the mountain in Rohan.
Okay.
They had to take all of the grass that they were going to get rid of so they could build on it. They took it to a greenhouse halfway across the country and cared for it for like 2 years, so that when they were all done and they struck the set, they put that grass back immediately, right? Like that's how crazy it is to be able to go through some of these productions, and especially the Redwood Forest. But the Redwood Forest where they were filming was actually scheduled for logging, and they said, yeah, you can do whatever you want. So they were blowing shit up and making these big traps and all that stuff.
That's a great time to do that.
Yeah, it was. So they got kind of lucky with that one.
You talking about that makes me think of at Star Wars Celebration. I don't know if we talked about this or not, but we saw a clip of them doing a previs. Remember the previs that we saw?
Yeah, that was amazing.
It was a previs of the speeder bike chase.
Yeah.
And what they were comparing, it was like, here's what we did in Mandalorian whenever we had to escape from Order 66 in Mandalorian, versus here's what we had to do for Return of the Jedi's speeder chase. And you see like the digital version of this, and then you see like plastic Barbie dolls and like just stop motion-y look to it, it was so cool to see, where like they're just flying through. They have like coat hangers attached to these little things, moving them through like what looks like a forest in a way, going through it, and then like their heads are like because they're just little dolls. And it was so cool to see.
It was incredibly cinematic.
Yeah. It was done so well. And I don't know, because like nowadays we have such smaller cameras. Like their cameras there weren't that small, I don't feel like. So like, but they got pretty good shots of what they were trying to get.
Oh yeah, they got fantastic stuff. No, that was a really special moment of celebration to be able to see. I always like when I can, just like some of this trivia, like, oh, that's something I didn't know.
Yeah.
Because I steep myself so much in Star Wars, I feel sometimes I'm like, I have nothing else to learn, but yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, like the lead Stormtrooper was like a Boba Fett action figure or something like that too. Or it could have been they thought Boba Fett would be in it. I don't know.
I was really bummed to miss Doug Chang's panel, because I know he did a lot of that type of thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that'd been cool.
At celebrations. Maybe I can catch the next one in Japan. Okay, this is an interesting one. I like when, not like, but I always think it's really interesting when production things can kind of affect plot, or even just subtle stuff like this. Before filming began, it was discovered that all of Darth Vader's lightsaber props had either been lost or stolen
Before filming began?
Before filming began. Thus, one of Luke Skywalker's stunt saber props from Episode 5 had to be quickly cannibalized into a Vader-esque saber for this movie. I've always looked at the sabers, and you can tell, oh, yeah, Vader has like a new saber here. It looks a little bit like it, but it is different. I wonder why that is. Someone took it.
He's lost or stole them all.
Yeah, and it's close enough to Anakin's lightsaber. They're like, all right, well, we'll put the black thing here and this, but
just change a few things, make it look close.
Yeah.
Huh.
No, there's some big lightsaber, especially lightsaber hilt nerds that they can tell you exactly. You know, they'll pick up a prop and be like, okay, yeah, this is Episode 4's Luke. You can tell by the 5 ridges here as opposed to 6 on the production thing. But I love the idea that someone took it and they had to be like, what do we do? It's like,
take that one, make it a thing.
Here? Yeah, Lucas is like, yep, that's it.
Good enough.
Okay, here's one I didn't know, and this is kind of a big deal for me. Ralph McQuarrie became burned out because of his constant work on the movie and his hatred of the Ewok concept and walked away from production.
Really?
I had no idea that he walked away from production on Return of the Jedi. He hated the Ewoks that much. You have to remember, the Ewoks were originally going to be Wookiees.
Sure, it was going to be a Wookiee planet.
It was going to be effectively Kashyyyk. But that didn't work out because they didn't have like enough time and material to make those outfits.
Not enough fur.
So they literally, like Lucas says this, like I just cut them in half, and I just made like 3 small Ewok costumes
out of one big
one. But you know, I mean, that's one thing. Like you know, I know a lot of people. The Ewok thing was why they left Star Wars. And
sure.
I had no idea that Ralph McQuarrie was part of that.
It's like the making them Ewoks is like one of those limitation things where it's like, well, we can't do what we want to do. Yeah. What can we do?
Sure.
Well, we could make them smaller. Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's make them not Wookiees. Yeah. Ewoks.
This is an interesting one. Actually, I'm going to save that for a little bit. This one is kind of crazy. On what was dubbed Black Friday, 100,000 feet of film stock containing finished visual effects shots couldn't be read by the optical printer. We don't know why. Something was wrong with them, and they could not get that film stock back into the optical printer for editing. So George Lucas threw it out. The crew at Industrial Light and Magic were forced to go back to the drawing board and start again from scratch, with many getting drunk when they heard the news.
And this is it was all part of Return of the Jedi's film?
Yeah, Return of the Jedi's film. 100,000 feet of film stock containing visual effects shots.
Okay, well, at least it was just the visual effects stocks, I suppose.
Yeah,
but that still sucks.
It sucks.
Like, you don't have to get all the actors and stuff back necessarily.
Yeah, like, just imagine, like, all the work you put in there. It's like, well, I can't do it. Do it again.
Yeah. But, like, we don't have all the ships flying around. Yeah. We don't have turbo lasers. Mm-hmm. We don't have... Yeah, I don't know. It just depends on what it is.
Yeah. I always find that, especially a movie that's 40 years old now, a lot of people look back on that type of thing with very rose-colored glasses,
sure.
You know? And whenever you hear about production problems now, like in the Disney era and stuff like that, they think, oh, man, they're fucking it up, and they have no idea what Star Wars is really like. It was like there was always problems, and there was always people not liking something or disagreements. It's just that stuff is so much more pronounced now because everybody has a voice and everybody can voice it, you know? Mm-hmm. But I like to think that, you know, I wonder how the movie would have been different if we had that original 100,000 feet.
Yeah.
You know?
What did they had to shortchange because of it or anything?
Caroline Blasketon, who played Mon Mothma, had to re-record her dialogue after it was discovered that her microphone had picked up the sound of pigeons roosting in the set ceiling.
Pigeons.
Can you imagine if they didn't catch that and you're in there and she's many Bothans died to I love that. It's so, I don't know, humbling to think that a giant set like that still has problems with pigeons.
Yeah, it's crazy. No.
This is an interesting one, and it's also going to tie in a little bit to something that we're going to be talking about later. Screenwriter Lawrence Kasdan and executive producer George Lucas initially wanted to include the victory over the Empire shots of Imperial City, just like we got in the 97 version. However, they were unable to get a satisfactory name for the capital planet of the Empire. So they're just like, I can't think of the name, screw it.
So they just didn't do it.
In May 1991, author Timothy Zahn wrote a Star Wars spin-off book, Heir to the Empire, and came out with the capital planet's name as Coruscant. Lucas was happy with the name, and as a result, CGI shots of victory celebration sequences of other cities, including Coruscant, were included in the 1997 special edition.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See, and that's one of those things, too, where it's like actually trickling up.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's always that thing where in Marvel we talk about, like, well, maybe the shows will trickle up to the movies and stuff, and it never happens. But this is like, here's a Legends book. Yeah. Right? Or I guess at that point it's extended universe. That is creating, well, you know what? We'll put this in the movie. That's a good name. I like that name. Yeah. And I'm sure he kind of figured out what it looked like a little bit, right? I've never read Heir of the Empire, which will be an interesting conversation we have later on, too. Yep. But I would imagine he names it and kind of describes the planet a little bit, you know? So the idea of it being an all-city thing is maybe from him.
If I remember correctly, the original script it wasn't Endor at all. It was, the capital city was called Had Abaddon.
Had Abaddon. Mm-hmm. Had a bad one?
Had, H-A-D, and then Abaddon, A-B-B, I think, Abaddon. But, yeah, it's one of those things where, like, you can find some concept art, I think by Ralph McQuarrie, where, like, the throne room is in, like, this, like, lava mountain area. And Lucas being Lucas originally would just repurpose that for Mustafar
for Vader, yeah. I love repurposing things.
Another thing that I just never really thought of, for the only time, Luke Skywalker addresses ObiWan Kenobi as Obi-Wan rather than Ben. He only says refers to him as Obi-Wan in this movie.
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
I guess it's like, Ben.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. I mean, yeah. Just like the Ewok thing, Ian McDiarmid's character, Emperor Palpatine, is not referred to by his name in the original trilogy. He is only called the Emperor. And I remember this, too, because the novelization actually had the name Palpatine, but it was never spoken in the movie. And much like you talk about a lot whenever, you mock me when I'm like, I've only read it. A lot of older fans that know that fact call him Palpatine. And I'll even, like, catch some people, like, still saying Palpatine because in their head, that's still what it is.
That's how they read it.
Yeah.
Palpatine.
Yep. This was also the first movie to mention TIE fighters by name. I think it's like, get some of those TIE fighters off of us or something. Lando says it. But the other movies do not say TIE fighter. That's just something that we kind of know.
I'm trying to think in A New Hope when they're coming in. I just want to be like, it's not over yet. I got one. Yeah. I don't remember them being like, there's another TIE on us.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated with like what early drafts were. This one I think is kind of crazy. Originally, Moff Jerjerrod was written as Grand Moff Jerjerrod, and he was Emperor Palpatine's personal representative and schemed with him to turn Luke Skywalker to the dark side and betray Darth Vader. When Vader finds out, he breaks his neck. That's a big departure than what the very brief Jerjerrod we get.
They don't do that at all.
Yeah. I also learned that Alan Rickman auditioned for that role and didn't get it.
Of Jerjerrod?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep. He didn't get it. Yeah, that's crazy. Like I believe that Return of the Jedi is the only movie Vader doesn't choke anybody. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, I can think of at least the first two.
This cut story, he would have snapped his neck.
Well, it's because he's more forgiving.
Yes.
He is,
right? Oh, man. This is a cool fact. I'm not really sure where the source is for this, but I thought it was interesting. According to Star Wars canon, Luke has been to the Sarlacc pit before. During his adolescence, it was a popular dare amongst his friends to jump the Sarlacc pit in low-flying vehicles.
Really?
You imagine his kids. You imagine being Uncle Owen, like, where's Luke? And there's over there, like, you damn kids.
Well, you have to do that in Shadows of the Empire.
You do.
Right? Like, there's that speeder bike chase with the gang.
The swoop gang.
The swoop gang, yeah. And you have to, like, escape.
And you have to thread the needle, right?
And get them there, yeah. You have to save them from getting to Luke.
The duel between Vader and Luke is one of the few times where John Williams' score and lightsaber sound effects can be heard simultaneously in the original trilogy. Generally, when you have a lightsaber fight in the original trilogy, there is no music.
No music.
But this was a deliberate choice by Lucas and John Williams to highlight the epic final battle. And then I feel like from then on, they had music in lightsaber fights.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, they come back in with Duel of the Fates, and you can't deny how epic that makes that fight. But imagine that fight with no music. I think it would be obviously just
what
impressive.
Music is on the desert when QuiGon and Maul fight there?
There's something.
Is there music there?
But it's just like that whole fight sequence. It's very nebulous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's trying to highlight Duel of the Fates for later, so you get like a little sneak peek of that fight. And then we were talking about this a little bit ago, maybe this week or last week, but isn't it crazy that the prequel trilogy has a whole fight between Maul and QuiGon, like, on Tatooine, but no one ever puts that, like, as their, like, what lightsaber fight's your favorite?
Well, it's because you can't see anything.
You can't see anything.
There's nothing there.
But, like, those two characters duel. I want to see it.
They fight for, like, 20 seconds.
I know, but that's the thing. Like, I would love to have seen it, but I also respect Lucas's choice where it's like, look, I'm trying to tease you. You want to be able to see it, and you can't. That's going to make the payoff when you see it way better. So I respect the decision, and if anything, it makes it one of the most successful fights maybe in the whole saga for what the director wants you to feel.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. Makes sense.
I didn't know this. EV-99 is the first female droid to appear in a Star Wars movie. Also the only droid in any of the movies to be depicted with a moving mouth, at least in the original trilogy. But I didn't really realize that EV-99 is meant to be female gendered. Huh. You'll soon learn some respect, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I know that the actress that played it that was interesting.
Till he got mad at our last protocol droid and disintegrated him.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that either. And there's not very many droids that have some kind of moving mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the next one? TC?
TC,
right? That was a female
17?
droid, right?
19?
TC, I want to say TC-14.
TC-14, TC-16, I can't remember. I don't know.
I think that was a female droid.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Have you ever noticed the differences between Stormtroopers in the first two movies and Return of the
Jedi? If I say no, will you tell me?
No.
Oh. Yes. No, what are the differences of them?
During the production, 50 new Stormtrooper helmets were made, rather than reusing the remaining 12 from Star Wars.
Man, they only had 12?
Yep. For that, a new mold was made from the cast of the existing suit, which had collapsed during manufacturing. This explains the very squashed appearance of the helmets. So they're accurate to those original helmets, but those original helmets got squashed. So they're a little more squishy in their helmets design, which I always noticed primarily when you play video games. When Stormtrooper models come on screen, I'm always like, oh, they were looking at Return of the Jedi instead of the original.
I never noticed that. I've always thought Return of the Jedi had more of the Scout Troopers than the other ones.
Certainly did.
And I was like, wow, they're just in a different place.
But I'm sure some of our friends from the 501st will be able to immediately tell which one is from which mold.
Sure, the differences between them.
Because of the squishiness. Shooting the scene of Darth Vader's unmasking was handled with such secrecy that Sebastian Shaw was not even told what he would be doing until he arrived on set. He was spotted by his old friend Ian McDiarmid, they had known each other, who played Palpatine. He asked Shaw what he was doing there, and Shaw answered, I don't know. They haven't told me anything, except it has something to do with science fiction.
So they just told him he was just showing up.
Secrecy. He had no idea what he was doing. Isn't that nuts?
I mean, it's kind of like Empire Strikes Back a little bit, right?
A little bit.
Where it's like, all right, here's this line.
ObiWan
he's like,
Kenobi.
no!
Yeah, sure.
And he's like, why is he reacting like that? That's a little weird.
Overactor.
Yeah, right?
I thought that was interesting. Hey, here's a little factoid that I finally realized where it came from, because I talked about this when our conversation with the normies, and I talked about how Palpatine is over 100 years old, and that's no longer the case. The prequels have kind of changed that up, but according to Ian McDiarmid, in the Blu-ray commentary, Palpatine is supposedly 100 years old. So I heard it from Ian McDiarmid before, so I'll respect my source, but it's not true anymore.
But he's not 100
He's not 100 years old. And then, my last one is really just about the Anakin Skywalker Force Ghost thing and how he was taught by ObiWan Kenobi, but that fact has kind of changed a little bit throughout the years, too.
Well, yeah, it's a weird thing to kind of have him be taught there. Except, I mean, in the last moments, I suppose, but I like the idea more so that he's very connected with the Force because of the way he was born, I suppose, It just gives him a different strength that, while others can learn it, his may come more naturally.
Yeah. All right, well, that's some trivia about Return of the Jedi.
Sure. There's some things there I didn't know.
Yeah. No, I always like to learn that stuff, if only to get the perspective that there was no era in Star Wars that there wasn't screw-ups and mess-ups and things changing and production problems, and that's the cool thing about art. Art will live on forever, and no one's going to remember that.
Well, it's
they're gonna remember the experiences it gives you.
It's never finished, it escapes kind of thing, right? Yeah. It's like that idea. Mm-hmm. But George Lucas sometimes just keeps working on it more.
Yeah.
Like he was like, let me do another edition, a special edition.
Yeah, it's why sometimes I try to caution Star Wars fans, especially like really hardliners that don't want anything to change or don't want to have to rethink, about stuff that they've done before, especially when it comes to the Disney era and new artists coming in. It's like, look, no one sees this stuff as more precious than me, but you can't have it be that precious. It needs to be a story that evolves and changes and lets the next generation of kids be like, oh, that's cool, that's inspiring, and move on to create their own stories and live their own lives and stuff like that. I think it's important to go back and see the mistakes.
Yeah.
So that can come out.
I don't know if you've seen any of it. I watched a few episodes of what's it called? It's it came out on May 4th. It's the Young Jedi Adventures. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a few episodes of that, and I think it's fine for younger kids. It feels like one of those like Super Wise shows or I don't know, Word Girl. The younger ones where it's like we're gonna try to teach different elements, right? There's friendship and discipline and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Too. And it's just from a Star Wars perspective and stuff. Yeah. And it's not like I'm watching it where I'm like, this isn't Star Wars. It's just like this is for a much younger audience than what the initial Star Wars I think is for. But it's also very direct. Like I feel like this is more than like Resistance. Like Resistance was for like a younger audience too, I think. But this one is like we will help to maybe teach some values and things like that too, right? Like help your friends. Like your lightsaber is not more important than your friend falling off a cliff. Like those kind of situations there. But it's like, well, I can get both. It's like, no, why prioritize this inanimate object over this life? Like that kind of stuff.
And it's important for kids to be able to see that stuff. I would say in the movies as well. Like they, like the Clone Wars and Resistance, stuff like that. They need to immediately be able to understand if someone's good or bad, right? And that way they can try to see themselves or who they want to be in a story. And then you have stuff like Andor. That's completely the opposite, where this is for adults. This is for people that have gone through shit, looking at other people going through stuff and be like, I relate to that. Because I tell you what, a lot of kids aren't going to relate to the stuff like an Andor, but we can all relate to what it was like being a kid and not knowing what the world was like.
Sure.
Yeah.